director for New Spirit Baptist Church here in Dallas, Texas, where the Reverend Otis Grimes is pastor. And our lesson for today, June the 1st, in the year of our Lord 2025, is the offerings of Cain and Abel. The offerings of Cain and Abel. Our reference scriptures for this lesson are taken from the book of Genesis, the 4th chapter, and the 1st through the 16th verse. This is lesson 1 in our new lesson series, Sacred Altars and Holy Offerings. Our new lesson series, Sacred Altars and Holy Offerings. And of course, this is lesson 1 in unit 1 of this lesson series, the genesis of altars and sacrifices. Unit 1, the genesis of altars and sacrifices. Everybody who attended Sunday school during their childhood days more than likely know the Bible story of Cain and Abel. Therefore, this lesson is a reminder of two very important requirements for living lives pleasing to God. These are worshiping in the right spirit and avoiding unrighteous anger. Sacrifice and offering to God is a form of worship, and being angry at someone for the wrong reason opens the door for sinful thoughts and behavior. Again, we have a lot of scriptures in our printed text in this lesson this week, 16 in all. So again, I'll read them in two groups or sets and expound on each. Reading the first set of scriptures from the New International Version of the Bible, Genesis, the 4th chapter, and the 1st through the 8th verse, is as follows. Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, and Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading, the hearing, and the understanding of his holy word. We all know that God created Adam from the dust of the earth, then created Eve using one of Adam's ribs. We see that in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, and the 21st through the 22nd verse. Adam and Eve's firstborn son was named Cain, and their second was named Abel. Cain was a farmer who grew fruits and vegetables from the soil, and Abel was a rancher who raised cattle and sheep, or livestock. We don't know how many years it was between when God put Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden and when they started having children, but we know that Adam lived 930 years. Genesis, the 5th chapter and the 5th verse. We know that they had other sons and daughters when Adam was 30 years old. And when he was 130, we know that they had another son whose name was Seth. And then after that, Adam lived 800 years more and had other sons and daughters. We see that in Genesis, the 5th chapter and the 4th verse. Now, getting back to Cain and Abel, at some point they learned about worshiping God through sacrifices. We see in verses 3 through the A part of verse 4 that Cain brought some, quote, he brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, unquote. We note that nothing was said about this offering being of the first fruits. And we see that Abel also brought an offering to the Lord. But his offering was, quote, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock, unquote. God would later require that animal sacrifices be of the firstborn, which we see in Exodus, the 13th chapter and the 12th verse, and that sacrifices from the soil, which is grain or vegetables, be of the first fruits, we see that in Exodus, the 23rd chapter and the 19th verse. Although God had not made these requirements when Cain and Abel brought their sacrifices, they show the importance God places on offerings that are the best and nothing less. We are made in his image, so we don't particularly care for gifts that even the giver doesn't want. Now, this reminds me of someone I knew who would wrap up and give the free samples from department stores as gifts at Christmas time. And people were not too overly joyed to receive those gifts. So in the B part of verse 4 to the A part of verse 5, we see that the Lord looked favorably on Abel and his offering, but not on Cain and his offering. So Cain became very angry, and it showed on his face. And we've all seen the face of anger on someone who couldn't hide their anger. And Cain's anger was so great that he couldn't hide it. Now, it's okay to be angry with injustice or child abuse and the like. Jesus even got angry at times. We see that in Mark the 3rd chapter and the 5th verse, for example. However, Cain was angry because God accepted Abel's offering and not his. As we will see, nothing good can come from this sort of anger. So God asked Cain, that is, why was he angry and why was his face downcast? God, of course, knew the answer. He just wanted to prepare Cain for what he was about to say to Cain. God went on to say to Cain that if he did what is right, he would be accepted, to paraphrase. But if he did not do what is right, sin is ready and waiting to grab him. Again, this is paraphrasing. God said to Cain that he must rule over sin. We see here that anger born out of envy, jealousy, revenge, and all such opens the door for bad things to happen, which are always sinful. We have the power to choose not to be angry and to not sin. Our problem is that the flesh is weak and easily tempted by sin, by the sin nature we've inherited from Adam. The only way to overcome it is through prayer and a strong spiritual relationship or connection with God. But Cain didn't heed God's warning. Instead, he lured his brother Abel into a field and killed him. God's word constantly warns those outside of the ark of safety what the consequence of sin is: death, destruction, and eternal damnation. It's up to us to teach or preach his word, even though many will not heed it. Now, reading the second set of scriptures from the New International Version of the Bible, Genesis, the 4th chapter, and the 8th through the 16th verse, which is as follows. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went forth from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Again, may the Lord add a blessing to the reading, the hearing, and the understanding of his holy word. After the killing took place, God asked Cain where his brother Abel was. Not only did Cain lie to God by saying he didn't know, but he got uppity with God by asking if he was his brother's keeper. It's foolish to lie to God because he's omniscient. In other words, he knows everything, even our thoughts before we think them. And we see in 1 John, the 3rd chapter, the 19th and 20th verses as an example. We see in verse 10 that God knew where Abel was, even though he asked Cain what he had done. Then he told Cain that Abel's blood cries out to him, to God that is, from the ground. The lesson writer suggests that this could indicate that Cain might have tried to hide his evil deed by burying his brother Abel's body in the ground. However, it's sufficient to say that he tried to hide his evil deed and that Abel's blood did indeed spill onto the ground. Then God cursed Cain for killing his brother Abel, and that he was driven from the ground which received Abel's blood. He went on to say that the ground would no longer produce crops for Cain, and this was his livelihood, and that he would be a restless wanderer on the earth. To this, Cain said to God that his punishment was more than he could bear, and that by driving him from the land, he would no longer be in God's presence, and that by restlessly wandering the earth, whoever found him would kill him. However, we see God's mercy. He would have been perfectly justified by killing Cain for what he had done. And later, God did indeed declare the punishment for murder to be death. which we see in Genesis, the 9th chapter, the 5th through the 6th verse, and in Exodus, the 21st chapter and the 12th verse. But he said to Cain, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." And we know the number 7 represents completeness in the Bible. Then God put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. And in the last verse of our written text, verse 16, we see that Cain went out from God's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Now, who were the people that Cain feared would kill him? Again, we don't know how much time passed between the time Adam and Eve were put out of the Garden of Eden, but we know that when he was 130 years old, he and Eve had another son named Seth, which we see in Genesis, the 5th chapter and the 3rd verse. And we also know that after that, he lived another 800 years and had other sons and daughters. We see in Genesis, the 5th chapter and the 4th verse. These were his family, Cain's family. And so they probably knew what Cain had done. In this lesson, we learn how important it is that we give our best to God, and that we might as well not give it at all if it's not. In the New Testament, our bodies are living sacrifices for God. We see that in Romans, the 12th chapter and the 1st verse. Therefore, we should live our lives as best we can in accordance with His Word. This makes our offering to God acceptable as Abel's offering was, and not as Cain's offering was. The offerings of Cain and Abel. I hope you gained at least one thought from this lesson. May God bless you, and may He ever keep you.